In this section, we're going to talk about parenting plans and parenting schedules. The basic principle is that all parenting plans need to be in the best interest of your children. So, do you want a parenting plan or a parenting schedule? And that's for the two of you to decide. And I want you to think about some general considerations in looking at what's going to be the best for your kids. And one, think about what are the parties' work schedules? When are you both available to take care of the kids? Because you want to have it, the courts are going to look at how to maximize time with each parent. And so you want to start with, what are the parents' work schedules? Next consideration is, how far apart do the parents live from each other? Obviously, a parenting plan or a parenting schedule is going to look entirely different if the parties live 3 hours apart versus 10 minutes apart. And so you need to take that into consideration, and you need to have an honest discussion about it. It really doesn't help for you to blindside each other and to set up a parenting plan where you're 10 minutes apart and then move the kids 2 hours away. And so I want you to have those honest discussions, and that's what's going to work best in a do-it-yourself divorce. Then the next question is what school district do you want the kids to be going to school in? Obviously, it's going to be a harder discussion when your child's 6 months old than when your child is 14 years old. I know in my own life situation, my daughter, there was a decision that I was going to be working out in Monticello, and she was going to school, high school, in Moundsview. And so I made the decision to drive every day from Moundsview out to Monticello rather than move my daughter. And those are decisions you need to make. Then the next step that you need to think about is developing a child-focused plan. The Minnesota Supreme Court got together a group of experts, and these are experts in the areas of child development and custody evaluators and attorneys working in this area. And what they did is they created this guide, and included in the materials is a link to this guide. But what they're going to do, what that guide does, is it gives you all the important considerations in developing a child-focused parenting plan. And it even includes considerations, special considerations, for the different ages that your child is. Because obviously the needs of a 6-month-old are going to be different than the needs of a 14-year-old. So that's a really good place to go and to read that material before the two of you have a discussion about a parenting plan. Now, the next thing you need to be thinking about is what's going to be the regular parenting schedule for the kids on a day-to-day basis. And there's a number of different folks out there and plans we hear about. We hear about in 2-2-5 schedules, we hear about 3-4 schedules, those kind of things. But what I want you to think about is your children's needs and what might be good for them. Now think about that 2-2-5 schedule. I will just tell you that what I have learned through the years and what I have heard from hundreds of parents is that it takes the child 2 days to adjust to the home. So on a 2-2-5 schedule, just when the child is feeling comfortable, you're now moving them back to the other home. And as I said, children aren't backpacks. You can't just pick them up and carry them. And the more resilient your child is, I suppose, the more you can do those kind of transitions. But the less resilient your child is, the more you need to be thinking about having the child stay in one place for a longer period of time and how that parenting plan needs to adjust based on the needs of that child. And in particular, think about the children who have autism. They're on the autism spectrum, and how difficult it is for them in transitions. So do be thinking about that, and that's why it used to be 2-2-5 schedules. And again, a 2-2-5 schedule is mom on Monday and Tuesday, dad on Wednesday and Thursday, and then switching weekends. And so the 5 then is, what attaches to, if it's mom, it's, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday then in the next week. So as I say, those are more falling out of favor, and we're starting to look again at 3-4 schedules. and even every other week if the children, can handle it. Oftentimes on the every other week schedule, I suggest that the off-duty parent have some midway time, dinner time with the minor child, just so that they can stay in touch. Although this is the 21st century and we do have FaceTime and Zoom and those kind of things, so you can at least have face-to-face contact. But it's something to think about. Then another consideration is are you looking at supervised versus unsupervised parenting time? Now, I will tell you that the general principle in the court's mind is that both parents are fit to take care of their children and to not have supervised parenting time. But every now and again, someone will raise, well, I want, spouse B's parenting time to be supervised. Well, the considerations you need to have about that are, who is going to do the supervision? Do they know that you're suggesting that they do the supervision, and are they willing to do the supervision? Or are you going to be relying on one of the very few supervised parenting centers that we have here in Minnesota? Because if you're having them do it, you're going to have to know what their rules are. You're going to have to know what their time frames are, and the cost, because there is a cost, and usually those are, a cost to each parent. So you need to be thinking about that and what's going to be realistic, and yet still give that other parent time with the child. So then the next consideration that you have is, let's say you're in a default divorce and the other parent hasn't appeared and really hasn't shown any interest. Rather than set any schedule for them, I recommend that you simply reserve parenting time, and they can bring a motion if they ever want that parenting time. Because if you put in your judgment and decree a set parenting schedule for that uninterested parent, understand that will affect child support, and it may disadvantage you sometime in the future if that person decides to show up years later and now wants to follow that parenting schedule. Because, that could be harmful to the child. So do understand that you actually can reserve parenting time for an uninterested parent. So another consideration to have on regular parenting schedule is this concept of right of first refusal. A right of first refusal is usually seen in the situation where you have parent A, and parent A needs to take business trips on occasion. And so it comes up that parent A now needs to take a business trip over their parenting time. And you would like that parent to consider you first before, say, having a third party, like a new girlfriend or, a grandparent watch the kids. And especially if they're going to be gone more than, for an overnight, so that you can keep the child's regular schedule. And believe it or not, there's a lot of people who don't get along very well. And so they think, I had one case where the mom wanted to use anyone she could find rather than call dad. And so we wanted to make sure that there was this right of first refusal in the judgment and decree so that she would consider calling him first when she was taking a weekend away. So just think about it. Generally think about, though, that you don't really want to have someone say, oh, you're going to Target, so now you have to call me so I can watch the kids while you're at Target, especially if the kids are, 12, 14 years old. Obviously, it would make sense if they're under the age of 3 or 5 or 10. Anyway, I just wanted to bring up the issue. So then also think about, you can always trade days. What I want you to understand is your divorce, the court only has jurisdiction over the two of you, and that there is no big government that's going to be keeping an eye on whether the two of you follow your parenting plan. So if you decide that you can do this and you can make changes in your parenting time and schedule as the need arises, more power to you. And that's great. Everyone loves that. There isn't anyone that's going to, be doing it. The only two that can actually complain that one of you isn't following the parenting schedule is the other parent. And so just remember that if you're not willing to trade days and you want to keep to a very strict schedule, when life happens and now you need to change days, that other parent may not be willing to be as flexible with you either. So keep that in mind, folks, going forward. It's a really important rule of thumb is that all things considered, that unless there's something really important and a really important reason not to have the change, make those changes as you go along. Be flexible in your parenting decisions and your parenting time. Another important consideration to the regular parenting schedule is what to do on school release days, those days that the kids are not in school. And generally speaking, if the two of you have a fairly, close to 50-50 schedule, I always recommend keep your regular schedule as much as you possibly can because it provides consistency for your children. But if it is that one parent only has the kids on every other weekend, you might want to consider that they receive the additional school release days as a way to increase the parenting time between the minor child and your spouse. But it is something that you should consider as a part of your parenting plan. Then also consider summer schedule, if it's going to be different than the school year, because we all know that kids aren't in school yet during the entire year, and that there's 3 months in the summer where there can be greater flexibility in a lot of cases. And so even if the schedule is that during the school year, the kids, one parent may have to sacrifice and only have the children every other weekend because of a work schedule that they have that doesn't allow them to have more parenting time. Consider in the summer then to alternate, maybe every other week or every 2 weeks, so that each parent can have that uninterrupted time with the kids. And one of the things I hear a lot is a parent wants to be able to get the kids up in the morning, wants to be able to feed them breakfast, wants to be able to read them a nighttime story, and to see that they, be able to supervise bath time and all of those regular moments. I call it couch time. And it's kind of interesting because it seems like we're more willing to give moms couch time with the kids than we are dads. And so I want you to think about that. Children need both parents. They need dad's time as much as mom's time. And so do think about how you can maximize couch time with both parents. And the best time to do that is during summertime. So the next thing to consider is holidays. And generally the courts are going to look at alternating the holidays between you two. And I just want you to think about the Christmas holiday. And, forgive me if I'm talking about Christian holidays, because I have had a fair amount of folks who celebrate other holidays. So as an individual family, think about what holidays are important to you and how to apportion them as much as you can between the two parents. And while it may work in the beginning for the two of you to simply say you're going to share the holidays, that generally doesn't work once each of you is in a new relationship. And so you want to have a fallback plan, but again, be flexible. And if it works out that you simply share a holiday, that's fine. You don't have to be looking at the schedule, but your schedule should be that fallback of, in odd years, Johnny is going to be with mom, and in even years, Johnny's going to be with the other parent. It's a way of working that out. And I had a judge actually tell my client, he pointed his finger at him and said, look, if you don't get Thanksgiving this year, you're going to get it next year. And that's the way the courts view holiday time. So think about it. Then the next consideration is vacation time. Most folks take vacations. And so think about how long that vacation time is going to be to provide uninterrupted parenting time for that parent. Some folks, is it going to be staycations or is it going to be an actual vacation going somewhere? And the rule of thumb is, each of you should be able to have up to 2 weeks a year with the minor children. Oftentimes we say, most folks nowadays only take a week at a time. So you want us to have that week at a time attached to the person's, usual schedule as much as possible, to interfere as little as possible with the other person's parenting time. But it does usurp it. So that's important to note. You want to have at least, whatever's comfortable for you. Is it going to be a 30-day notice? Is it by May of every year? And you want to set a priority so that if the two of you want the same time, that in even years, maybe parent A is going to get the kids, first choice, or parent B in odd years, even years and odd years. So have that consideration as you're thinking about that. And then you want to make sure that if it is travel somewhere, that you provide the other person with a basic itinerary so they know, I don't mean that, we're going to be here between 2 and 3 on this particular day, but it should be that if you're going to go a couple different places, that we're going to be in Wisconsin on Monday or Tuesday and, somewhere else on Wednesday, Thursday, just so that there's a basic idea. And certainly be sure to include flight numbers, because no parent should hear that a plane has gone down and wonder whether their child's on that flight. That's just basic decency. And I want you to think about that. And if you have to, write it in there, because the more you write in there, the better it is for the two of you. Again, it's a fallback. And you want to also include contact information so that if the two of you agree that there's going to be a good night call, that continues even while they're on vacation, if it's at all possible. So then the next consideration to have is transportation. And I will tell you that the courts generally want the parties to equally split the transportation. So if it has to be a meeting at a halfway point, think about what that's going to look like and make sure it's in there. The other factor that I often think of is, when's the parent most likely to be on time? And that is when the parent is receiving the children. And so you want to have it usually that I have found that it's the receiving parent that's responsible for picking up the kids. And again, it can certainly be from the other parent's home. If it is from school, you want to make sure that you have the additional language that is going to be the other parent's home when school's not in session. Or then again, identifying that midway point. But people don't stay in one place generally, so you want to include some caveats. In fact, now that I think about it, I had one post-dissolution matter, and neither party lived in the town that they originally were in. And so it was a question of, okay, where do we meet now? And that's something that they worked out in mediation. So then another consideration is communication. And how are you going to communicate going forward? Hopefully, there's only a temporary situation that the two of you can't talk to each other if it is a particularly difficult divorce, although hopefully if you're doing your own divorce, it's not that kind of divorce. So think about communication in terms of parent to parent and also parent to child. I've talked recently about, being able to have a good night call. Just understand and be realistic about that good night call. I had a dad who complained that the 3-year-old would only talk to him for 30 seconds. Well, 30 seconds for a 3-year-old actually may be probably the length of that child's attention span. So you can't set unrealistic expectations that you're going to have 15 minutes. Flexibility is the key. The good news is, as I said before, we are in the 21st century. And so there's things like phone calls, FaceTime, Zoom, emails, text messages. It needs to be, if you want to just say there will be reasonable parenting time. I had a case where mom liked to call the child, text the child after 11 o'clock at night. And this really upset dad because the child's bedtime was 8 o'clock. And so it does need to be a reasonable time when the children are awake. I had another case where dad insisted that the boy contact him and respond to him every time he texted him. Well, dad texted him 10 times during Thanksgiving dinner on mom's time. So if you're, just understand it needs to be reasonable. And again, simple courtesy. You shouldn't be interfering intentionally with the other parent's parenting time, but it should be a check-in. And certainly in every case, it should be that the child is able to contact either parent whenever they want, whenever it's necessary. I guess use reason there too. So another consideration in terms of communication is I just want to introduce you to our family wizard. And no, I don't get a kickback from our family wizard, but it has proved to be a Cadillac tool for parties who really can't speak to each other, and also for parties that get along really well, that are looking for a common database to go and put their calendars, journaling, all of the special medical stuff like those darn shot records, and other medical information. It can also be set up to include when you have to pay each other for your unreimbursed medical expenses and stuff. So it's a great tool. There are other tools. There is Google Calendars, just as a way to keep track of when the children go where. But it is, there are other forms of communication you can have with your ex-spouse that don't require the two of you to actually have to talk to each other, but yet communicate regarding your children. Just remember, you are modeling your child's future behavior. And so if the two of you can't talk to each other, or if you're nasty to each other, think about how that's affecting your children going forward. Other terms. You can also add additional language to your divorce decree that talks about mutual bedtimes, the children being in therapy, extracurricular activities and payment of those, church, and all of that. The general principle is the courts will allow the two of you to reach agreements. And if you put it in your divorce decree, understand that it now becomes an enforceable order. So you want to be thinking about it, and just understand that bedtimes, I don't think any judge is going to order, sanction a parent for allowing the kids to stay up later than the 10 o'clock bedtime. So you've got to use some common sense there. I want to just give you a couple words of advice too about parenting plans. Be careful. Don't keep your divorce alive for your children. Just work on getting through your issues that you have with each other. I really want you to be really good parents to your kids going forward. And all the studies show that if the two of you can at least be cordial to each other and respectful, that the kids will be okay going into adulthood. And I will just tell you that if you can't do it, then go see a counselor or a therapist. Don't work it out through your children. Don't do what my parents did. My parents' divorce ended with the death of my mother. My dad died the year before. And the reason I'm telling you that is just remember, you don't want to do that to your kids. And I have talked with an awful lot of adult children of people who've divorced. And in fact, a lot of you may be children of divorced parents. And so do think about that and try and keep your kids out of the center of your divorce. Keep them safe, keep them happy, and help them be better adults going forward. Just remember, a healthier you means healthier children and healthier relationships. If at all possible, work out a way to have a respectful relationship with your ex-spouse. And I want to tell you, in my own divorce, and I've been divorced over 30 years, both my ex-spouse and I have been front and center at our children's graduation, college open houses, marriages, birth of our grandchildren, and all the special holidays. And if you are a jerk now, just understand that you may be excluded from your children's special moments going forward as adults. So again, you are modeling your children's future behavior. Set a child-focused parenting schedule